All right, Jonathan, let's just jump right in. I know when I speak with speakers about their experience on the platform in breakout rooms or sessions, like as educators and teachers, sometimes I'll hear them comment that they feel that they might feel awkward in front of the group, or they're not really sure that the people are with them. Like we can all relate to that, looking out and not sure somebody's actually digging it or following along, or that they just feel like maybe the group wasn't moved to action. And so that was one of the main reasons I was hoping to talk with you today about this idea of owning the room, which I hear you talk about. So could you tell us, like, what does that mean to you to own the room?
There are a few different aspects of that, but ultimately your audience really feel you. They're really connected. They're moved by you. They're inspired. They take action afterward. And for example, they're not just interested. And this is a sign that you're not owning the room, is if they're interested and they're polite and they may even give you a nice compliment afterward. But it's kind of the equivalent of talking about our services and someone saying, "Oh, wow, well, I'm sure many people need that," as opposed to I want that or that's not for
Yeah.
me. So they want to work with you. And also what it means is that you just know how to inhabit the stage, whether that's a virtual stage or even more so because it requires more skills, is to be on a real stage and how to have that stage be yours and you own that. And it's not like you are owning the people in there, but you are owning that entire space where they feel you for that time, and you can even have them in the palm of your hand in some ways. They're right there with you.
Which is what we want to feel, right? As speakers, we really want to feel like this is making a difference. I anticipate that there may be many that have felt this challenge. And do you think there is a reason why more speakers don't own the room?
I think there's some mindset things, first of all, where they say, well, my job here is to train them or to inform or to educate.
Mhm.
And instead of really thinking I'm here to transform. Now we know there's only so much we can like transform other people, but we can create a space of transformation and of how do you really inhabit that in a bigger way. So I think that's number one. Another is that they may not have the speaking foundations truly down. And what I found is that quite a lot, probably honestly, most of experienced speakers are missing some foundational pieces. So, for example, I've seen so many speakers who still get some nerves before they speak. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's really not necessary. Or they don't have good vocal power. I work with a lot of experienced speakers who get vocal strain, who don't know how to project their voice loudly, and who just aren't really compelling with their voice. So there are other things as well, but they have to have the foundations really solid. And if they don't have that, then that's going to get in the way of them owning the room as well.
Mm. Mhm. Well, I'm like, I'm probably gonna need to ask you a question. I'm like this, so listening and drawn into this, it makes me evaluate. There are so many aspects to speaking, aren't there? And I know a couple of our colleagues that I can come to name, their names come to the top of my mind right now. I've gone through your Claim Your Voice online training program. That's what I was just thinking about, how there are multiple facets to this to understand. But what I'm kind of getting from this too is it feels to me like it's almost an energetic, for lack of a better word, exchange, right?
Mhm.
When you own that room, that there's really, you stand in presence and confidence and like exuding your truth and your knowledge, but there's energetic exchange there. Is there is that part of how we go about owning the room, or like how do we go about owning the room?
Yeah. So there are different aspects, and you're starting to connect with a couple of them. So first of all, connection is a big aspect of that.
Mhm.
And A lot of people don't know like how to deeply connect with an audience. And there's a few aspects of connection, and there's a whole body of work. But first of all, is making sure they're connected with themselves. And when they have that inner awareness and connection, and they're also like grounded, connected with the earth, and they are deeply receiving an audience, and not which goes beyond eye contact, to really tune in and look. And from that place, they know how to impact and have tools to be able to do that with what they say and how they say it. And I'll get to that, more of that in just a moment. But that place of connection, that is an energetic exchange. And often what happens if they're speaking in front of a room, there is no exchange of energy. If that is their mindset, it's like I'm here speaking and I'm looking at you, but I'm speaking kind of at an audience
Right.
rather
Not
than
me.
right, attuning. And this is one of the pieces, like the way that I teach a lot of foundational work in terms of vocal power and how do you work with your body language. But then I was just seeing this actually with people going through my Claim Your Voice intensive right now when we're working on talks. And the point where I say, okay, stop talk, even just on Zoom, say, stop talking at us and now look at someone and tune into them. And how are you going to speak to that one person is subtly going to be different than how you're going to speak to someone else. And that level of attunement and having the skills to impact differently, but also feeling the energy of what's called to you, of how you want to reach them. Like this is a big part of connection and creating greater impact. Now, on the energetic side as well, is there's the energy of how does your energy inhabit the entire room? In a way that doesn't have you feel exhausted either, where you just to learn to expand that and fill the room in a way that creates a container for them. Now, for me, I'm looking at with that as well, or I can get kind of woo, is we can look at, well, how are you grounding the entire energy into the earth? How are you connecting with something greater? So it's not just like you holding the room, but this greater energy that you have called forth that you're holding the room with that. Then that becomes an incredibly powerful alchemical container, a place not just for imparting information, but for transformation, for what people are wanting to receive.
Mm.
So now another aspect is also being really relaxed and being very, very comfortable. And a lot of speakers hold level of physical tension and kind of holding and bracing. And when we're really relaxed and we're dropped in, then and where this is also part of interconnection. And I see people all the time like holding and sometimes people are either nervous and they kind of a slight freeze response, or they're kind of too controlling. Owning them is not controlling because you can't control how people feel, or so it's just really relaxed and centered. And when you combine these two things, when you are very relaxed and at ease, and when you have deep connection, this is one way that I articulate the development of presence. And so presence is this deeply connected and deeply relaxed. Now, I also talk about presence as the four aspects of presence. So physical presence or embodiment. This relaxation is part of the embodiment. There's also emotional openness. So there's an open heart and people really feel you. There's the mental presence, which is also about connection and where we're focusing. And then this energetic quality of presence. These are things that you can learn and grow. And a lot of people don't realize how much more that they can grow these in a way that people will just feel you when you walk into a room. So that is the number one aspect, then, these two parts that create number one aspect of owning the room. Anything questions
Yeah,
before I go on?
I wasn't sure if you were ready for me to go. I'm thinking how the when we master these qualities and these skills, how much that would help us grow as entrepreneurs, as speakers and consultants. So it would help us so much in many ways. Like for instance, here we are in 2024, and almost all day, every day, we're on Zoom. At least many of us who are coaches are on Zoom, and these same qualities would exist here virtually, as you and I right now are on Zoom recording this. But that whole idea of it feels to me like you almost want to lean into that person when they are also loving out to you. They're sending you that energy and that eye contact. Even though I could be looking, if it feels like I'm looking right at your eyes, there's something really powerful about that.
Absolutely. And there's really two aspects of that. Is one is how do we show up on Zoom when we're with an individual or with a group? And if you're doing a consultation, if you have services, they just feel you and they're like they're magnetized by you in a very positive way, not in a some sort of manipulative or I have some speakers who say, oh, well, I learned neurolinguistic programming and like which for me is like how to intentionally manipulate people, which is not sometimes people say, "Oh, have you studied NLP? It looks like you're using that." I'm like, no. Great if there's overlap, but my job is to show up and with integrity. So,
And
so,
both are
so
valid, right? It's like both are valid.
right.
Um,
Oh
and
yeah,
right?
I just forgot. I started to go off a tangent. So the other aspect uh, of
Virtual.
how of being virtual is how you create a video. and and
Oh,
so I will have someone who sees me speak in a workshop or webinar and then they learn about my stuff and I've literally been hearing recently I've researched and I've been consuming every video of yours that I could find online and learning from that. It's like because when you are showing up with that level of presence and just and owning that space and owning yourself and your energy is people just want to learn more. They're fascinated by that. And there's no manipulation. There's no like I'm trying to be powerful. It's just showing up and owning your space.
mm, mm.
Now, part of that though, the second element of the three, so we have presence, again, recapping, which has both that connection, relaxation, and then the second is dynamic. So how to be really dynamic. And this is an advanced skill. I started to teach this as well as Own the Room, kind of. I start to intro in it later in my foundational training, Claim Your Voice. But to be really dynamic is something that you have to learn. And usually people have certain strengths. Like, for example, like maybe someone has good pitch variation. Like maybe they can really go up and down. And now there's another question, do they understand for each dynamic how it affects an audience? And this is part of the psychology of speaking to understand that all aspects of nonverbal communication affect an audience. Now, for the most part, your audience will have no idea why they're engaged or not engaged. They're not going to consciously perceive it, but they are going to be drawn in or they're going to be disengaged or potentially repelled with the wrong thing. And when you start to learn how to vary your voice, for example, pitch, tempo, volume variation, how to use pausing dynamically, and more, advanced speaking styles, and you learn how to just like be dynamic on stage without again trying to be overly performative. These are integrated into your expressive vocabulary so they feel like part of you.
Yeah.
Then it gets
Yeah.
exciting and part of that also is that and this is very very important and in terms of this level is that variation is the key to keeping your audience's attention.
Mm.
I have seen innumerable speakers who are great for 10 minutes. And then they keep doing the same thing, but the audience starts to get accustomed to your speaking style. And if you don't have the tools of variation, they kind of start to subtly tune out after a bit.
Yes.
So you have to have that. Now, there's also the performance element, as you know, I'm a theater performer too. And so how to own the stage. How do you walk on stage and move and own that? And it's you don't want to just stand still. Sometimes we're limited by the how big a room is or how big the stage is or if you have slides or a big screen. But how do you walk and own that and be dynamic with your body and not just pace and that the art of doing that is also really important. So those are some of the aspects of being really dynamic that allow you to own the room and also really to have a lot more fun. It's just such a joy to get up there and own it like that.
That's fabulous. I wish we had a ton more time because there's so many things I want to ask you, but I think what I've heard is presence and dynamic. And was there a third way to own the room?
Right. So the third aspect is making sure that the way you craft your talk is compelling.
Mm,
And there's a lot to this of when I teach how to craft transformational talks. But one thing, for example, is you have to have a structure that grabs their attention at the beginning, that they're compelled to want to hear the next section of what you say. And at the end, they're inspired that if they are your ideal clients, like, I want to work with you, or I want to do your call to action, I want to implement that into my business. So how you craft the talk is, again, it's a big topic, but that's a third one that is really important. And when you do that, you just have to, I say this to make sure you know it's not just about your nonverbal communication and how you show up, but it's also, of course, how you put that talk together as well.
and that you have compelling content first, and then how you put it together, like to elevate it, right? Like we have to have something worth listening to.
Right.
Right, and then how we put it together. So what I heard, like at our kind of a high level quick view here of how do we own the room, presence, how we show up, being dynamic, and then also have compelling content that's written and delivered in a compelling manner.
That's right.
Is there anything else we'd want to discuss before we head back to the room?
I think the last thing I would emphasize is the integration of all of those. So ultimately, it's not just having the tools of being dynamic, but how to integrate that and prepare that into your talk in advance so you know which parts merit different types of delivery skills. And yet also when you're speaking live, that you can pivot and feel the room and adjust it to what's needed, which is where the element of presence comes in as well. So with all of that, I just want to say owning the room is something that is very possible and is really fun and is the next level for any good speaker to become far more impactful.
Oh, thank you. I was thinking that too, though, as you were just saying that, like we can grow into this as we continue to refine our skills and continue to work with speaker development coaches like yourself and be able to practice it so that it becomes who we be and feels natural. For even though we may right now not feel completely natural on the stage, we can grow into that. So with that, why don't we head back to the room? And thank you so much for sharing, Jonathan. It was a delight to spend this time with you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
All right, here we go.